Welcome to The Trader, a Spotify Top 10 Traitors podcast. My name's Matthew. I'm a writer working in unscripted TV development, and I am a 100% faithful fan of the multi-award winning hit TV competition series, The Traitors. This podcast features deep dives into every episode of the show, as well as interviews with contestants. And this season of the podcast has been dedicated to season 2 of The Traitors New Zealand. To help me discuss the final episodes 11 and 12. I'm joined again by the same co-host who has been with me for the whole season. What a surprise. Unbelievably, it's David Bloomberg.
Yay, let me uncloak. Yes.
It's
Wait,
been
I
you
already
this
did
whole
that.
time.
Yes. I have been me this whole time. And if anyone is just tuning in now to the finale and hasn't been listening to all the previous podcasts, well, then welcome. I think most people probably know who I am by now, but just in case, I have been covering reality TV for over 24 years in a wide variety of different places and continue here. So, yeah, we'll talk more about where everybody can find me at the end.
Yes. And like I said, we've made it. We've reached the finale. Again, we initially thought there were only 8 episodes.
Yes.
So when we found out there were an extra 4, we were very happy and relieved. So I sort of desperately want to ask David what he thinks about the finale. And we've been talking for 15 minutes already, but we actually haven't spoken about our thoughts and reactions. We're saving it for the listeners. So I don't know what David thinks of it all. I can't wait to hear. Before we get into the episodes, we are going to, for the final time this season, set up our own game of betrayal and deception. This is the Trader Traitor. Our not so secret mission from here on in is to tell a lie to one another. The lie has to be a fabrication or a made up fact, big or small, about the show, about ourselves, about anything. For example, I could lie and tell David that I have been cast as the host for a revival of The Traitors Australia. Hooray! However, I could not say that I hated this season of The Traitors New Zealand when the truth is that actually I loved it. That would be a fake opinion. So we are looking for fake facts, not fake thoughts and feelings. For the final time, David, are you ready to betray me?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, you seem too certain about that. I don't like it. I like it when you're not sure and
Sometimes I pretend, but I'm always ready to betray you.
as am I. And that means our game begins now. And actually, this is the this is the first time I've really not planned a lie. Usually, plan a lie. I have it in my notes. I highlight it red. I've not really planned a lie today because I was quite last minute in actually watching the episodes. In fact, I only finished watching the episode about 60 seconds before David and I came on the call. So we'll see how this goes. I have confidence in myself, of course.
You
Uh,
you have confidence in yourself and be able to ad lib a lie.
yes, and I have
So when,
integrity. I've played this game with integrity and authenticity throughout the podcast, David,
yeah, so
which
far, yeah. Yeah.
I'm like a really good faithful, and I think that's how you win. So
Yes.
here we
Yes.
go.
We're not going to have any fake glitches in the recording this time.
Oh no, yes, just listeners, if you noticed something strange last week, I did get 1 or 2 messages. I last week I pretend my lie in the game was that David had cut out and I needed him to repeat something, and it was all a big lie. And I had 1 or 2 listeners sending me messages saying, "Hey, I don't know if you know, but there's a mistake in your podcast recording." But they just had to wait a little while to figure out it was all part of my evil plan.
Yes.
So we are ready to go ahead, and we're going to start by talking about episode 11 of Traitors New Zealand season 2. We begin with our usual recap. We are reminded that in the previous episode, Ben had been seduced and was a new traitor. Kat was obsessed with Ciali's theoretical conversation about blackmail, which happened before he actually was recruited as a traitor. And then Ben was swiftly banished and on his way out dropped a hint about only being on the job for one day before he left, which no one seemed to make that much of a big deal of. And as it turns out, since then, no one really seemed to return to it in these last
Yeah,
couple of episodes either.
they do use it at breakfast. We'll get to it. They use it at breakfast today,
Ah,
a little bit, a little bit. Um, and shout out to Ben. He commented on one of my Instagram reels about
yay!
Ciale uncloaking, which I still think was one of the most amazing scenes of any Traitors
Yeah.
anywhere. And he commented something like, "And here I was comforting you." You know,
Excellent. We've got. It's nice to have contestants listening to the podcast. Hello.
yes.
Um, we are also reminded in our recap that the remaining traitors, Bailey and Ciale, had some time to discuss their murder victims, and it seemed like they were settling on either Kat, Donna, or Joe, and we had ended with that sort of cliffhanger. We didn't know who they were going to choose. We start this episode then in a new morning. There's a great aerial shot of the house to open the episode. It's very foggy and atmospheric. It's very sort of Lord of the Rings, which of course was filmed in New Zealand. So I like this opening shot. It really brought me in. At breakfast, Joe arrives, immediately dispelling my prediction that he would be the murder victim. So I was wrong straight away. Noel is with them, and they have absolutely nothing to talk about. It's very awkward. Noel sort of wants to talk game, but he says he doesn't want to talk game with Joe. And he thinks that Joe is only still here because he can't put two and two together. Noel, I think you're correct.
Yeah, yeah. My notes say, "Ouch." True, but ouch.
Yeah, poor Joe, but yes. Meanwhile, Joe's annoyed that Noel told the other players what he had said about suspecting Kat and Donna, because remember, it came to him in a vision when he had the hood put on him in the last mission. And Joe brings this up again throughout the episode. Ciale arrives, followed by Jason, who theorizes about the number of OG traitors. He thinks that the game must have started with four. Noel thinks it was three. It kind of depends on whether you count Jackie as an original
Right.
traitor. She was technically a recruit, but she was recruited before they did any real traitoring, which is now a verb. So I count her as an original, I think.
Yeah, I mean it depends what you're looking for when you're doing this. I would count her as an original in that,
Yeah.
like you said, there was no traitoring before then. But she also, if you're trying to logic out who would have been picked by production,
Hmm.
then you can't count her as an original because she was picked by the traitors
Yeah.
for a very specific reason, which was to blow up and go home.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Which she did very well.
Yes, yes.
Uh, Whatever the case, they conclude that there are most likely two traitors left in the game. Bailey arrives next. She tells us she feels that her game is strong right now, and we realize that Kat and Donna are the only two not present. Noel notices that Bailey, Kat, and Donna, well, he thinks they haven't ever received any votes. And Bailey sort of corrects him, and she said, "No, well, I did get one from Mark." And they do all agree that Noel has had the roughest ride in terms of receiving votes consistently
Mm.
throughout the season and somehow surviving. The door knocks, we have a dramatic pause, and Donna arrives, meaning David, you were correct. Kat is
Yay!
well done. Kat is gone. She was chosen to be murdered. Joe's baffled because he had been convinced that well this time he says he was convinced that Kat and Noel were the traitors. That's not what he said yesterday. Yeah, yesterday he thought it was Kat and Donna. So he's changing his mind as we speak. Um,
No, not Joe. Joe would never change his mind on a whim.
no, no,
Never.
never. So we get so Dawn arrives. We see her in her confessional. She's very upset. She was sure that she would be murdered, and she's upset that Kat is gone because they got on well. We get a flashback to the conclave, and the traitors basically thought that Kat was the strongest faithful because she was on to see Ali for all the wrong reasons, but was on to see
Hmm.
Ali and probably was not going to let that go. And they decide to kind of double bluff everyone. So because it might appear too obvious that Ciali would just murder Cat if he was a traitor, they think, well, let's just go ahead and do it, and then we can claim, hey, it's so obvious, it can't be me. I've been set up by the traitors. That's their thinking. Uh, so we go back to breakfast. Jason points out that amongst the people left, four of them are faithful, two are traitors. If they're correct in that there are two
Right.
traitors, and they are correct.
Hmm.
Paul arrives, tells them this is the penultimate breakfast, and he teases a long lunch, an important lunch date. And they sort of laugh a little bit. They lighten the mood with jokes about Joe wearing fur and feathers. We've said this before, I think. Paul, as a host, seems to have a little bit more banter. He seems a little bit more
Hmm.
relaxed this season, I think. And the final six seem to be, a friendly group. They all seem to get on really well. That they can sometimes escape the game to
Yeah.
just sort of have a laugh amongst one another. Sometimes they're not very good at this, but we'll get there. So we have some discussions around the house. Jason
Oh,
and
wait,
Joe.
wait. You
Oh,
missed a very important thing
oh.
because Paul pulled down Kat's portrait and he said, see ya, which proves Paul is a traitor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is what Sia means.
Yes.
So as we've figured out this season, yeah, I would love if that was a secret twist that the host was one of the traitors the whole time was actually playing the game. So Jason and Joe are having a discussion, and Joe is still very confused about Kat. And they start to wonder maybe she was getting too close to the truth, i.e., that Ciali is a traitor.
Hmm.
And Jason says that he can't dismiss this possibility because he knows that at this point he really has to consider everything. Uh, but then goes on to say right after this that he's sure Bailey is a faithful because she's never tried to influence him or sway him. He doesn't stick with that feeling as the episodes go on,
Right.
but for now, this is what he thinks.
Yeah, it's interesting because one thing, you mentioned the double bluff, Cialis thinking, oh, well, if they, look at it, then of course I wouldn't have done that. It was so obvious. I, it seems like Jason is doing some first level thinking here. Like, well, he must have gone after her because she was coming after him. Whereas I was hoping it would be more like third level thinking, like, well, he's smart enough to know that we wouldn't think he did it, but and then go that extra level there. Now maybe they were talking that way and production was like, oh, this is dizzying, let's just cut that part out. Because in general Jason has shows that he's pretty smart and pretty with it. Joe, yeah, not so much.
Yeah. Although I think Jason has definitely shone at the last moment. Like I didn't feel like I really knew Jason at the start of the show. I I was going to get onto this later, but I'm surprised that Jason is still here in a way. He just went completely under my radar, not my radar, just my general radar. Um,
Well,
I didn't think he was. I didn't ever
yeah.
see anything incredibly perceptive or insightful from him until these last couple of episodes when he's come to the fore. I think it's because he wanted to replace Utah as the detective, and so he's
Right.
stepped up to that role.
Right. And someone will say that to him later, like, hey, where'd you, I
Yeah.
suspect you because and he's like, oh, kind of had to. I mean, you can fade into the background and it's actually a smart move to fade into the background when there's a large group. You
Hmm.
don't want to be the lead detective, when there's a large group because then you get picked off.
Yes.
There's a reason, but at some point, yeah, you do need to step up.
Yeah. Next, we see Noel and Donna chatting. They're discussing why they think they're both still here. And Noel gets it. He completely
Yeah.
understands why he's still here. He knows
Yeah.
that he's been kept as bait and that Donna is probably being kept because she keeps coming after him. So that's good for the
Hmm.
traitors. And I can't tell if Donna is, she's sort of smiling and nodding. I don't know if she really believes that or, well, as it turns out, no, I think, based on what she ends up
Yeah.
voting, I think she's just going along with Noel. for the sake of being nice in a conversation, but I don't think she's really on the same page as him. Bailey joins them, and Noel, like Jason, thinks that Kat was on to see Ali, and that's why she's gone. We then see something that we've talked about being quite rare in the traitors. The two traitors are actually having a quiet moment together.
Hmm.
Bailey and Cialy are whispering to one another. Bailey says she thinks she needs to go for Donna tonight, and she is dreading it because she's very close to Donna. They get on well. And she's going to claim that she thinks Donna's a traitor and has been keeping her in the game because they're close. And as she's telling Cialy this, he is realizing how clever Bailey is, and we get interview clips of him saying that she is the smiling assassin and that she's very smart, and she maybe he's underestimated her, and he realizes he probably has to be wary of Bailey, which is wise.
Yes, it's funny that he called her that. I wonder if, I mean, since New Zealand, Australia, I think they share a fair amount of TV. I don't know that for sure, but there was an Australian Survivor, the most recent season, where the winner, spoiler alert, was known as the smiling assassin. And
Uh,
so I wonder if that was already in his mind from
mm,
perhaps watching that.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So we move to the cars next. There's not much to report here. This scene's really short. They're all just sort of wondering what this lunch that Paul has alluded to really is. And so they arrive. It's not really a mission, is it? It's sort of like a task rather than a mission, I suppose. They reach this long lunch table with several knives placed into the food in the middle, which I just thought was part of the decoration and didn't mean anything, but it turns out to be really important.
As soon as they mentioned it, I knew it was something. I just didn't know what. As soon as they had one person come in and say, and there are three knives stuck in the chicken or whatever it was, I was like, okay, that has to do with something, And
Yeah, I think I was too preoccupied with things that we've seen in at least one other season. I just assumed this would be a simple sort of like temptation task. I thought they would offer somebody some money to lead, although it's a bit late in the game to do that,
yeah,
or it would be some sort of like vote someone out right now. Vote who's your favorite, who's your least trustworthy, and I don't know, some sort of personality thing. But it kind of is personality based, what they end up doing.
yeah.
So Paul tells them that there is $6,000 available for this task. Each side of the table where they've sat is a team, and it's the same as the way they were in the cars. So we have Joe, Cialy, and Jason versus Donna, Bailey, and Noel.
I thought
I
$6,000 was very small for the
Yeah,
second to last mission.
yeah. They say it's and a lot of missions from memory seem to have been $6,000. Yeah, it seems a bit
Yeah,
meager at this point. You'd
yeah.
think the sort of stakes would be raised a little bit in this second last episode. Um, I think the producers have been listening to the Trader. They stole my game, kind of. Oh no, wait, it's a game that everybody plays. They
Yeah.
play two truths and a lie. So if a team guesses an opponent's lie, they will win $2,000. And
It's funny
someone
because
in
as I was watching, I was thinking, oh, we should do. Oh, wait, we kind of do this. We
yeah,
we do lots of truths and a lie is what we do.
yeah, yeah, maybe we should tweak it a little bit at some point. We'll have a big dead animal in the middle of a table, and we'll pull a knife out of it or something. So, someone in the winning team at the end will win an incredible advantage. We just don't quite know what that is yet. Did you? I mean, did you guess what it was going to be before they reveal it? You know, the what the advantage is. Or
No,
no,
no.
okay.
I was like, huh, an advantage. He didn't say a shield, an advantage. That's weird. I don't know that we've had that sort of advantage before.
Yeah. Um, I thought it was some sort of like pass straight to the final, like a super shield, like can't be murdered and can't be banished or something like that. But we don't know until the end of the mission what it is. So I won't go through every single statement and line that they read out. I'll
Hmm.
go through the sort of the correct ones for each person. So Noel is first, and the team guesses correctly that the lie is that he can't say the word esophagus. And Noel's annoyed because he thinks he would never have picked this lie for himself, and normally he'd be really good at this game.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a pretty. Sorry, production. That was stupid.
I mean, he did well at sort of instantly, you know,
Yeah,
faking not being able to read it
right.
properly off the card, but still a bit silly maybe. Jason's next. They guessed correctly that his lie was about being clinically dead for 2 minutes. Bailey, they guessed correctly that she photobombed Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom. That was a lie. Orlando Bloom, little connection to Lord of the Rings, New Zealand there.
Hmm.
Joe's next, and they guess the wrong statement this time. They guess that he won 7 crowns as a beauty queen pageant coach, but actually, the real lie was that he walked the runway at New Zealand Fashion Week. Donna, it's funny. So one of Donna's statements is about her being, or that she used to be fluent in Japanese. And Ciali then asks her a question in Japanese that she is, after a moment, is able to respond to. I'm not kidding. I skipped back on this about 4 times, turned the volume up, tried to look for subtitles because I was like, what are they saying? Like, I can't understand. It really took me a minute to realize, oh, they're speaking Japanese to each other. Like, I didn't get it straight away. I just thought I couldn't understand their accents or that they were like mumbling or something. So I wasted quite some time replaying that bit over and over before it hit me. Oh, they're speaking Japanese. Anyway, they guess her lie is about owning a racehorse. Actually, the lie is about her having a budgie. Ciali's next. They guess correctly that.
Which, by the way, I just want to say it was interesting when they asked her, "How do you measure race?
Yeah,
Horses?"
yeah.
He's like, "Just because I own one doesn't mean I know." It's like, well, are you allowed to lie to support your lie? It's two truths and a lie shouldn't be, and also like a 20 questions, because she could have also just pretended she didn't understand the Japanese in that case.
Yeah, I thought about the same thing. I thought, wouldn't you deliberately try and make them think one of the truths is a lie? Yeah, so she, I mean, maybe she really doesn't know how you measure horse. That'd be amazing considering she owns one. But
Yeah,
yeah, I thought, oh, she's just doing that deliberately to throw them off and make them pick that. So, but likewise, I didn't understand how much back and forth was. How many times, how many questions can they ask? Or is
right.
it supposed to be really, really quick? There's a TV
Mhm.
show in the UK called Would I Lie to You? I don't know if there's a US version. And Would I Lie to You is like this, but it's like half an hour long. And it's a panel show of comedians, celebrities, comedians, and they read out a statement and then they're interrogated by the opposing team for like 5 minutes about this lie, and it becomes ridiculous, and it's really funny. It's a good show, but so yeah, I couldn't tell if this was supposed to be like that or not. Uh, yeah, Ciali, they correctly guess that his lie is about only having one kidney, and it means that there's a tie break between the teams. So Paul is going to break the tie break by playing the game himself. He reads out a single statement. First player to shout out anything, truth or lie, represents their team, and that counts as their guess. So Paul reads out this statement about his first Chinese crested dog. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
The strange hairless dogs that we saw a few episodes ago. He says that his first one was called Professor Spanky.
No,
Noel,
stanky,
what?
stanky,
Oh,
stanky.
oh, not Spanky with a
No,
P. Okay,
no. Unless
that's
that
not my
was your lie
lie.
and I just
I
blew
just
it
can't
for you.
understand Paul. Okay,
But
Professor
that's
something.
what I heard. I heard stanky.
Well, whatever it is, Noel calls it a lie, but actually it turns out to be true, which means the other team wins.
Well,
Um,
and the interesting thing is that, you know, Noel calls it a lie because his other dogs are much more pretentious named. But the funny thing is, wasn't Paul known for like being a shock jock in his earlier years?
I I know that there's a lot of controversy around him. Yeah, and
Yeah.
he is known for saying outrageous things and very politically incorrect things. So yeah, maybe yeah.
So maybe, Noel not knowing that history. I don't
Mm.
know that I would have pulled it up immediately, off the top of my head either. But just thinking about it, I wonder if those two things are related.
Yeah. Do you mean because Noel is American and maybe he doesn't have that knowledge of
And
Paul?
young, and he only
Mm.
knows Paul as the Paul that's in
The
front of him
host.
right
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think of that. Yeah, that makes sense. So for the winning team, they each have to pull a knife from the bird in the table, and whoever pulls the largest knife will have a double vote. They will have two votes at round table. I'm pretty sure this has been used in at least one international version of the show. I couldn't tell you which one, but I feel like this is something a listener has mentioned before to us in an email or on a YouTube comment or
Hmm.
something.
Well,
Uh,
and in Survivor, they frequently have extra votes,
okay,
extra vote
okay.
advantages. And in most cases, not to spoil the outcome of this one, but in most cases, it ends up
Not
not
really doing
really
much.
doing
Yeah,
anything.
yeah.
Yeah. Other than it frequently gets people in trouble. Uh,
Okay. I have a couple of thoughts and questions about the double vote, but I will return to them at the round table. Maybe you can help me out. So, Jason wins, and he is a little bit worried that this will attract the traitors to him. He thinks that that will provoke them to come and start sort of telling him lies and trying to influence him.
no,
We
they would never do that.
we head back to the house then. Although I don't know where this all takes place. Like, because we see that they use the cars to get there. It feels like they didn't really need to go in a car to get to this. Like,
Maybe
couldn't they
they
have just
drove in a
filmed
circle.
this?
Yeah, maybe they drove in a circle. They
Yeah.
left and then came back, and the room was, it was really the guest house or a
Yeah.
different room,
A
different
very
dining room.
environmentally unfriendly, I would say. So we're back at the house, if they ever left. Jason sort of he says that he intends to talk to everyone one on one. Although we then see Bailey come to him as if it's her choice to approach him. It's a bit unclear.
Hmm.
So she comes in, she speaks to him first, and she suggests that Donna might be a traitor. And she explains this theory again that her and Donna are close, and maybe that's the reason she's still in the game, is that Donna's actually a traitor and has been keeping her there deliberately.
Oh,
Um,
by the way, speaking of Donna, I have this note, and it must have happened in the car because I didn't because it's before what you're saying, and it's just this quote that I think we have to address because she says we can be absolutely convinced on something, and we all vote wrong at some stage. Truer words have never been spoken by Donna before.
yeah, poor Donna doesn't quite realize what she's doing. Uh, So, um, I think this is the moment when Bailey presents this theory to Jason that maybe Don is a traitor. He finds this immediately very suspicious, and I wonder if this is the moment when he changes his mind about Bailey. Because earlier
Hmm.
he had said to Joe, I've convinced she's faithful." So maybe here's where he starts to suspect her
Did
quite
you see,
seriously.
by the way, in this scene, the bird flying around the room? It was very distracting to me. They were like moving through the room, and there's this bird just flying around through there.
Um, Either this is your lie or I've blocked it out. um, no, but I feel like this happened. Did this not happen in some other season that there's a
No, it
bird in the
happened
house?
earlier this season when the bird
Oh,
uh, shat on the
yeah.
pool table or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, this time it utterly passed me by, no pun intended. It flew by me, I should say.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, very nice.
Cialy then talks to, I've written here, Cialy then talks to Cialy. No, that's not right.
Yeah, he
Jason
could
talks to
be.
Cialy, or Cialy talks to Jason, or maybe Cialy was talking to himself. Um, Cialy and Jason talk, I guess is what I meant. Asking him, someone is asking someone about Donna. And Cialy says he doesn't really have much on her other than that she throws out sort of chaotic names and guesses at round table.
Hmm.
He this is Cialy talks about all the people in the game who are connected. He talks about all the sort of pairs and ultimately suggests that maybe Donna and Bailey are because they're close. Maybe they're. I think he's suggesting that they're traitors. Maybe they have to look to them and be suspicious of them. He also then gets quite reflective. We see an interview clip with him, and he seems quite remorseful even. He says he doesn't like lying to Jason, and that when Jason tells Cieli he knows that he would never have turned on Utah, it just makes Cieli feel even more guilty. So he's
Hmm.
just sort of struggling with the emotions of the game and the constant facade that you have to keep up, even when you've made friends with these people. We basically then head towards Round Table with Jason realizing how much responsibility he has with his double vote, even if it turns out it doesn't actually
Hmm.
do very much. So at Round Table, Paul tells them that the prize pot at this point is $53,000, and he tells them, "Don't wait to be attacked. Attack." It's quite a sort of like almost manipulative like
Yeah, it's
suggestion that
definitely
Paul's giving them.
a very host thing to do.
So after Paul tells them to attack, there is then an excruciating silence as no one attacks. And eventually, Jason begins. He tells them that he needs to hear their arguments because he has this double vote. And he begins by focusing on Ciali. Kat's suspicions of him are still on his mind. Noel thinks that Ciali has taken a bit of a step back the past few days, and Ciali tries to defend himself by saying, well, it's because Utah isn't here. And normally I would bounce my ideas off of him. He would take the lead and it would help me out. And I haven't had that help. And he also claims it's just harder now because there are so few of them. And he generally feels like he does trust who's left. So he just doesn't know where to look. Joe speaks to Noel and brings up this thing that he brought up earlier. He says, I told you in the car that I was suspicious of Donna and Kat and that I didn't want it to leave the car, but it did. And he says, I don't know if that was just you being a little snake or if it's traitorous behavior. Noel owns up and he said, yes, I did tell other people this. I told Donna because we'd been speaking about not waiting until the round table to air our thoughts and that we have to get everything out there. So I felt like I just had to bring it up. Joe says that Noel has no loyalty to anyone. Noel talks a bit about why he thinks he's still here and why he's never really been worried about murder is because he's being used as a scapegoat, which is correct. And Donna comes back in to accuse Noel again. She says that she still needs to know if he's a traitor because if they can figure that out, it will unlock everything. And Joe agrees with this. He says it's worth the risk to just get Noel out now and know the truth once and for all. Uh, I feel like this happens a lot in the Traitors that there are these characters who make it all the way to like the last episode of the second
Hmm.
last. It makes me think of US season one, Kate Chastain. Like she was just kind of a nightmare all the way through the season and this like
Hmm.
outrageous
Yeah.
character, but
Tell me
makes it
about it.
all the
Yeah.
way to the end pretty much. And then she's kind of caused so much trouble at that point that they all just vote her out. Oh, no, spoiler if you've not seen US.
Yeah.
And she was a faithful all along, but had just been on everybody's minds so much that there was no way she was going to make it to the final episode.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I mean, Donna in saying this even acknowledges, yeah, I know I'm a broken record. Yes, Donna, we know you're a broken record too. Um, and but I think Noel says something like, I'm not the key. Getting rid of me doesn't tell you anything.
mm,
And it would leave two traders out of five. And then, like you mentioned, Joe saying he's willing to take the risk. Oh, well, that's awful nice of you. You're willing to take the risk of getting rid of Noel and ending his game. But yeah, I mean, if he were playing strategically, which he is not, getting rid of a faithful isn't a big deal because you need to get to the end anyway, whether you're getting rid of faithful or traitors. I don't think there was any way that Joe and Noel were ever going to get to the end and split the money as faithful.
yeah,
They were, like you mentioned, they don't even appear to like each other at this point
yeah,
at breakfast.
yeah,
So
yeah,
just say what you're doing, Joe. That's all.
yeah. I actually, as much as we've sort of been poking fun at Donna for always coming after Noel. I do understand. I think if I was in their position, paranoia would get the better of me as well, and I can't imagine myself getting to the end game with Noel
Oh
and
yeah.
not voting him out. He's there's been so much suspicion on him, particularly after the sort of death row when he
Hmm.
was one of the three people that was chosen and the other two are gone. And I think I just wouldn't take the risk, and I also
Yeah.
probably would just vote him out, even though I felt bad about it. And I don't think I would risk taking him all the way to the end. So.
Right. Yeah.
Um, Jason then turns to Donna and asks why she was so upset at breakfast that morning. And Donna basically says, "Look, I was convinced I was going to be murdered last night. I just couldn't believe I was still here." And she had said earlier as well, she was upset about Kat going. Donna then talks about authenticity and integrity, which she does a few times, which I know is your favorite thing to hear in this
Oh
show.
yes. Yes, that definitely.
And she wonders why she's still in the game and questions if it's connected to her closeness to Bailey. And Bailey jumps in to say the same thing that she's been
Hmm.
saying. She feels the same. Maybe Dawn is a traitor, and that's she's been keeping her around. It's funny because next Jason is in the middle of telling Bailey that now's the time for her to ask questions that she wants to ask, when Paul really truly cuts them off mid-conversation. And
Yeah.
you've mentioned this a couple of times, David. I thought this was the most apparent example of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Jason says, if people want questions for Donna, now is the time. And Paul's like, enough talk. And I'm like, okay, so I
Yeah,
guess now is not the time.
yeah. It's just so interesting because in all these other seasons, we hear contestants like on this podcast and doing interviews talking about the making of the show and what it's like behind the scenes, and they always say those round tables take hours to. We're there for
Hmm.
2 and 3 hours. They just want us to talk and talk and talk. So it's funny to see the opposite happening. The host literally interrupting them mid sentence and saying, "Okay, stop." I mean,
Yeah.
maybe they had been going for 3 hours and they were still going on, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess they just want to make it a bit more dramatic or something.
Yeah. They
Uh,
didn't want they have to pay the camera people overtime.
yeah. Or if I have my conspiracy theory hat on, they want Bailey to do well and they don't want her in the spotlight for too long. So they're like, don't let her dig herself into a
Well,
hole here. I don't
I'd
know.
say it was the wrong time then because it looked like they were about to flip on Donna, but who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the votes, it's time for the votes to come in. Here we go. Noel votes for Donna and says he figured he might as well get her back for once. Um, Bailey also votes for Donna. And then Ciali votes for Noel, as does Joe, as does Donna, uh, which means Noel has three, Donna has two. So it's up to Jason. Of course, they've left him to the end. He's got
Hmm.
his two votes. And so Paul asks Jason, "Who do your two votes go to?" And I had this sudden thought, just the way that he phrased that, "Who do your two
Hmm.
votes go to?" I thought, can he assign two separate votes to two separate individuals, or does it have to be two votes for one person? I assume it has to be two votes for one person,
I
but
was thinking the same thing again, going back to Survivor, because when you get an extra vote, you can use it however you want. Now, I can't think of a reason why you'd want to split the vote unless it's early in the season and you're trying to hedge your bets, but then you end up pissing off two people. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So before Jason reveals, we can tell that either Noel or Donna will go.
Hmm.
Uh, if Jason votes for one of the other players, like the
Right.
actual traitors, Noel will still have the most votes because he has three. And as it turns out, Jason votes for Noel. He gives his double vote to him. Poor Noel. Uh, I had another question actually. I did wonder. I think the answer is definitely no. I wondered if Jason could have kept his dagger till next time. Like, is there an option? There was just
I
something
would,
about the way that he sort of
yeah,
placed it in front of him as if to say, I've used it now. I thought,
yeah.
was he
I
allowed
would,
to keep it?
I would suspect not, because then why bother in that case?
Yeah.
Um, Especially since it appeared that he did it after everybody knew already. So I think he had
Yeah.
to do that. One thing, by the way, you left out when Joe voted for Noel. He said that even though the game is about lies and deceit, for him, it's honor and integrity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
I
had
did,
to, you know,
I did notice that.
insert my eye roll here in an
Yeah.
audio medium.
Noel stands up to speak to the group then. He says there are no hard feelings. He loves the doors and respects them all very much. He says, first, I'm not a very honest person. I've been an actor since I was 9 and a very capable poker player since I could hold the cards. And there are all these grins round the table. I think they've
Hmm.
caught him. They've got the traitor. And he says, I was determined to come in here and deceive you all as the wide-eyed American boy. And I think he says the innocent Southlander. I couldn't
Yes.
quite catch what he was saying.
Yes.
And I get they all seem to think, haha, this is his big confession. But he continues and says, but I didn't do that. I've stepped outside my comfort zone and I've played a good, honest game. Start to finish, I am a faithful. And off he goes. We see Donna and Cialy with their heads in their hands.
Yes. That popping sound you heard was Donna's head imploding,
It's,
you know.
I noticed here that Jason, if we're believing the order of the editing, Jason
Right.
seems to be looking around the table, I thought, to watch the others' reactions. Uh, Paul speaks to them and reminds them that, of course, if one traitor is left at the end of this game, they win.
Hmm.
And then tells them there will be no more murders. They are the final five. I I'm so surprised at this final five. I did not see Donna or Joe, even maybe Jason making it this far. So it's a really surprising group left around the
But
table.
yeah, I think in the final episode, we'll understand more why those two particular people made it this far.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, I did want to mention since Noel mentioned that he was an actor, I had to run to IMDb again.
Yes. That's why I didn't
Because
do it. I knew you would do it.
yeah, I thought it would have been funny if Noel had been an actor in anything with Ben. Maybe that eggplant paper mache thing. And they just didn't show us because they didn't want us to know. But no, from what I can see, his only listing is for this show.
Well,
So
maybe he's a theater actor.
that's what I was going to say. Maybe he's only done stage acting, which I I guess it's possible. It's further confusing because when I was searching to find his last name, uh, he was also listed by one preseason article uh, as an actor in, sorry, a preseason article in the spinoff as an actor. Almost sounded like an actor in the spinoff, but the spinoff is the name of the publication. Um, and so the spinoff is a New Zealand website, according to its About Us page. It is, I'm guessing, the town. I have no idea how to pronounce it. Aotearoa. It's Aotearoa. Aotearoa. Anyway, they're most innovative independent media organization with a focus on vibrant modern coverage of current affairs and pop culture. Um, and so luckily, I waited until after I had watched the finale. I wasn't going to do any searches until after watching the finale because they had the preseason article. And so I'm scrolling down and oh, there he is. He's, actor, this, that, the other thing. Okay. And then I kept right after it, they had an article about the finale. Like there was nothing in between. And I probably would have noticed this if I hadn't watched the finale and I probably would have stopped, but I'm not sure. So I'm glad I waited. But since it was after the finale, I kept reading. And one thing the writer said about Noel's reveal was a criticism of Gen Z faithfuls hiding that they're actors because it has no bearing on anything in the game and it's a bit annoying. I disagree with both. I think they're just plain wrong because we have seen it have a bearing
Yeah.
not because they're an actor, but because if they tell people they're an actor, other people believe it has a bearing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's, the perception becomes reality thing. So that made me annoyed at the writer for not understanding that. I am not going to send them a terse email. I'll leave them be. But I was
uh,
like, grr.
yeah, you're right. I don't think this is a spoiler, right? Season one of UK had a player called Maddie, and Maddie was an actress, and she kept it a secret. And sort of at some point in the
Mm-hmm.
season decides to tell the others, and yeah, they all are kind of horrified and use this as a reason to suspect her because
Yeah.
she's an actress. That means that she's amazing at lying to us, and which was really silly. And even this season of New
Well,
Zealand, Mike realized that players could be so easily fooled by this, so he used this whole fake story about Whitney not really being a
oh,
mortician.
right.
Uh,
Well, and
and
in the
everyone
US,
agreed with it and was like, "Yes,
yeah.
you're right. That is suspicious. She must be lying about," as if it meant
Yeah.
anything to do with the game.
Right. Well, and in the US, I can't remember which season it was, but there was, because it's mostly reality people, but there were, I think it was season two that had an actor in there. And they were like, oh, you're an actor. You could be,
I think it was
fooling all of
Kevin.
us. I can't remember his name.
Uh, yeah, that this sounds familiar.
Yeah.
To season two. You're right. Uh,
So,
s- so they have one final mission left. As Paul tells them. Oh, I just remembered I was gonna. Uh, I'm jumping back a little bit. But the name of the place in New Zealand that I can't pronounce that you mentioned, I was thinking I work with a couple of people from New Zealand, so I could ask them about it. The funny thing is, I have spoken to people at work about talk about the podcast. People at work know that I do the
mhm.
podcast and stuff, and uh, one of them was asking, "Oh, what are you do? What are you podcasting about right now?" And I was like, "Oh, New Zealand." I was like, "You
Mhm.
have there's a Traitors New Zealand on season two right now, but neither of them knew anything about it."
Ah,
And they know the traitors and they
yeah.
work in TV and they know the UK one, but both of them were like, "Oh, I didn't know that." So it's funny that I mean maybe you live in the UK, you're not paying attention to TV back home, but I just thought it was funny that me, the Scottish person, was watching Traitors New Zealand every week, and the actual people from New Zealand had no knowledge of it whatsoever. Uh, so Paul tells them that they have one final mission. It's a very, very tense atmosphere at this point. Bailey starts crying. Donna even looks quite emotional too. Cialy, I get the impression he's kind of avoiding looking at the others. And Jason asks, so the question is, are there two traitors in here or one? Uh, we get actually some discussion beyond round table to finish off the
Mhm.
episode. We see Joe's really upset about banishing Noel. He says, "I put that boy through so much." Poor
Yeah, you
Noel.
should feel guilty, Joe.
Bailey apologizes very tearfully to Donna for voting for her, but Donna says she understands, she gets it. And Bailey is saying, "Well, look, I just couldn't vote for Noel. I couldn't do it to him, and I feel so bad that Noel had the roughest ride of everybody." Donna, in her interview, again says she understands Bailey's vote. She doesn't hold a grudge, which could end up being very significant. Uh, Bailey is yeah, she's upset talking to Donna, and even in her confessional as well, she's getting really upset about lying to her friend and having to keep up this pretense for so long. Jason feels very guilty about ending Noel's dream. He also thinks the odds are that one of the South Island Pacificers is a traitor. In other words, either Joe or Cialy. And his guess is it's probably Cialy. Cialy is worried that Bailey might be quite ruthless because he saw the way that she voted for Donna, not easily, but the fact that she was able to vote against her friend like that makes him realize, oh, if she could do that to Donna, I'm sure she could quite easily come for me. Uh, this is essentially where the episode ends, and I just wrote down a final few notes sort of in real time as I was watching. So I hadn't seen the final episode yet,
Mhm.
and my thoughts here were that at this point, I think we're in for a traitor win just numerically. I thought there are still two left, and I wrote I think Bailey can still pull it off. Uh, so that was my theory
Yeah,
before I watched the final episode.
I was still thinking, which I had been thinking leading into this episode, I was still thinking Ciali.
Well, the
And
last thing I
yeah,
wrote here was I think neither Ciali nor Donna will win now, and I guess I ended up
uh,
being right. Uh,
um, especially since they ended it with him saying, it's a ruthless game and you aren't here to win, then what are you doing here? Which I was like, yes, go Ciali, just for that quote, basically. But um, yeah, I did think that I still thought he had the best chance of doing it.
okay. Which leads right on to you for the final
Yes.
episode, David.
Yes. And so, he said, if you aren't here to win, what are you doing here? So now it's time to find out who's here to win. Uh, we begin at breakfast, and once again, it's silly to have them come in, broken up, because we know there's no murder. But Jason and Joe are first in. Joe is proud to have made it. He honored all his promises in a house full of lies. But he also notes to Jason that he didn't even have to play the game and he's still there in the finale. Yes, Joe, you not playing the game is why you are still there in the finale. Nobody was worried about you.
Yeah,
Though at this moment, I was mildly worried he might win and ruin the season. But
sure. Well, it reaffirms a theory that I have voiced before on the podcast that despite all of the strategy that we talk about and how do you play the game, what's the best thing, what you're
mm,
supposed to do, what really gets you to the end. Actually, I think in maybe not all seasons, or maybe not even in most seasons, but in several seasons of this show, you can make it to the final episode by doing nothing right. Like you can just sort of accidentally end there by like bad luck or by not really having a clue what's going on. I don't want to like name names, but Meryl. So like I think you can actually get really far in the Traitors
oh,
by not
sure.
really having a clue
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, because you're not a threat to anyone.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, not to neg on Donna, but the fact that she was so hyper focused on Noel for the whole time is similar. It's like, oh, she's clueless as to who the actual traitors are and focused on Noel, so we could just keep her around. And
Yeah.
Joe was just clueless about the whole game in general. So I think it's a good strategy to have
To
if
be an
you
idiot.
can. Well, yeah, if you can give yourself that strategy, is
Yeah, yeah.
basically, but it takes a fair amount of acting
Yeah.
to do that. And I think most of the people who come on the Traitors are doing it because they either want to be a traitor or they want to be the detective and find the traitor.
Yeah.
Not just, oh, I want to come and hang out and have fun.
Yeah.
And so it you don't get many of those types of people, I think.
Yeah.
Um, or at least not intentionally. Um, anyway, Joe tells us he's starting to worry about Jason because he's never been so assertive. So this is what I was talking about earlier. I'm wondering, I know I mentioned it earlier, but I'm wondering, was it because of the double dagger last episode? Like, I know it didn't actually impact the vote, but the double vote dagger kind of made him feel more powerful, and he started going around questioning people, and it's like, you have two votes, you don't have all the votes,
Yeah.
um but I think that it did kind of give him more oomph to go around and play that detective role more. But also there's only five people left, so who else is going to do it? uh the only person Joe trusts is Ciali. But Jason asks Joe to trust him. The other three arrive. Donna tells us 3 years ago she was twice her size and had weight loss surgery, and now she's on the show. And I know I have harped on Donna for her Noel tunnel vision, but good for her. Good for her.
Yeah. I I find this little inclusion quite strange. Like to suddenly get this,
Yes.
I mean, kind of irrelevant piece of information. Like I mean, it's like nice, and we get to see a little bit of the human side of Donna, but
Hmm.
it made me wonder, is she going to win now? And that's why they're giving her like some backstory. Like, why include this here? So it threw me a
I
bit.
mean, I'll get to later why I knew she wasn't going to win, but or why I believed she wasn't going to win. But yeah, I think it was just like, oh, all we've talked about with Donna is her focus on Noel. We'd better put some human side
Yeah.
in there. So she may have had that interview well, not
Yeah.
weeks of episodes, but days earlier, and they just were like, oh, we need to say something more about Donna now that Noel's gone.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I suppose it amplifies maybe the emotion of what ends up happening,
right.
and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because like she said, she wouldn't have had the confidence to be there, 3 years ago. So again, good for her. Um, Joe notes that they had a lot of actors in here, and the others ask if he's one, and he says, "Yeah, I acted straight half my life," which gets a huge laugh from all of them. Uh, uh, Donna is looking forward to getting to know the traders in real life when they don't have to put on an act. Based on some pictures I've seen on Instagram, it looks like a number of them have been doing just that, though I avoided all such posts over the past couple days due to spoiler possibilities.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I've seen
so,
some of these posts on Instagram of them having it looks like they're maybe having like viewing parties together,
right,
and which is nice,
right.
really nice to see.
Yeah, it is. Um, Joe decides he's going to set a trap by talking about how guilty the traders must feel. And in a perfect display of the body language issue we have talked about so many times here, he determines that Bailey must be a traitor because she was concentrating on eating and not looking up,
Yeah.
while Jason was rocking back and forth and tried to cut him off. Did he get Bailey right? Yeah, sure. But he had a 50-50 shot of getting one right since he already had predetermined he trusted Ciale.
Yeah.
So maybe more than so. Let's see. So he was picking two, and there were four. So yeah, I guess it's about 50-50 to get one right. Um, and I think it would have been actually more surprising if he hadn't gotten one, although he eliminates it. Anyway, math. I'm not going to worry about. Um, doing this off the top of my head. Should not be doing that. Now, the funny thing is, looking down and eating instead of paying attention to the person speaking caused a huge issue on the current season of US Big Brother as well. The head of household, which I don't think you have in British Big Brother, but they're the ones who make the nominations.
Okay.
They had gotten hugs from everyone after one event or house meeting or something like that. But one guy sat there and kept eating. And the head of household, she was so mad at him. And she brought it up multiple times to show that he didn't like her or respect her. And she ended up getting him evicted with this as one of the reasons that she focused on. So remember, people, when someone's talking, don't pay attention to your food, pay attention to them. But more pertinent to Joe trying to read body language, also on the same current season of US Big Brother, a player was absolutely certain that someone else had a secret power. And so he grilled her and he told her, I think you have this power. Actually, he didn't say, I think, I know you have this power. And he had years of training in psychology and even special CIA training in body language analysis. And he knew she had it. You could probably guess where this is going. She did not have it. Um, but we never saw him go back and address that again. And it just really reminded me of every season of The Traitors where people are sure they see something in someone's body language and they're usually wrong.
Yeah.
So welcome to the club, Joe. Anyway, moving back to New Zealand from the US, from California, Paul arrives and says the prize pool is 53,000. And each remaining player will face a personal challenge for $4,000 each, so a possible $20,000. And I wonder if anyone has to get a Sam Smith haircut.
Yeah, uh, thought I made a note about how
Yeah,
this is. It's basically season one finale mission all over again in a way.
it's similar, but they
No,
don't,
you don't ask
they
anyone
just
to get a
each,
permanent tattoo.
well, and also they don't have to like 4 out of 5 of them do it. It's
Yeah,
each, they get paid for each one that gets done.
yeah, that's what I was expecting, and I was sort of watching it thinking, oh, which one of them might not do? Yeah,
Hmm.
but then it didn't actually kind of didn't really matter that
Right.
much.
Before the mission, Donna and Jason talk. She says she felt like Jason was attacking her at the round table, but he says it brought out the fire in her eyes, and now he believes she's faithful. And he also asks her to trust him the same way he asked Joe at breakfast. It's almost like this might come up later. Uh, the other three chat, and Joe half jokingly says everyone knows he's a faithful, so Cialy and Bailey have to prove themselves to him. He questions Bailey, and she gives her planned answer, wondering, in response to wondering why she's still there. Meanwhile, Cialy tells us Bailey is his biggest threat, and he saw how she turned on Donna, but he hasn't really mentioned her name, so he needs others to do it. Now, here's the thing that I'm thinking. She's only a threat to you if you don't think she's willing to share at the end.
Yeah,
But then Bailey tells us part of her would like to share with Cialy at the end, but she can't trust him. And it's really the mutual distrust that gets you. Even if both wanted to share, they would have to fully believe that the other person would want to share. So that's just an extreme amount. You'd almost need a situation of like Cialy and Utah as the final two traitors or something for them
hmm
to agree to share the money. Um, I think that's what leads to traders generally getting each other out.
yeah. Apologies to David and listeners if you can suddenly hear a cat
Nope.
going nuts. Okay, because
I could see a cat, but I cannot hear a cat.
I I'm sure this is thrilling for the listeners, but I
Yeah.
let a crying cat into the room and she's just going nuts behind me. But okay.
Ah, you have a good microphone. And see, this is the funny part because this is actually my lie. We can totally hear the cat. And no, it's not. Final mission. Each one gets a Walkman to hear their individual tasks. So, first, earlier in the season, we saw a VCR. And now we see a Walkman, and younger viewers are like, what the hell are those? Why are they pressing these big chunky buttons on them? What is going on here? So a Walkman for you younger viewers of the show and listeners of the podcast, you used to put cassette tapes into them and play those. And if you don't know what a cassette tape is, look it up on Wikipedia. Bailey will be locked and bound in a coffin and then has to free herself and escape through sewer tunnels. Jason has to abseil down a cliff and then climb back up. Donna has to dissect a mouse and put the organs back. Good thing Whitney isn't here, or she'd have pulled out a little mouse foot instead of a lung. Um, Cialy has to lie down in a bed filled with insects for 5 minutes and then put his head in a box with crickets while listing the players who have been eliminated in order. Joe has to drink 5 shots of hot sauce and then eat 5 chilies. All of them have 30 minutes, but none are nearly as much fun as last season, I don't feel like.
Yeah.
Uh, we get various scenes of each of them working on their tasks. It seems to me, I didn't time it, but I think we get more focus on Joe and his hot sauce and pepper problems. We get a bit on Cialy's bugs and him messing up a couple times in his list of those who left. Not much time spent on Donna's mouse or Jason's climbing or Bailey's escape. And in the end, they all succeed. So the final prize pool is $73,000.
I agree that they don't seem quite as intense as a couple of things on season one, like being asked to get a tattoo and
Mm-hmm.
being asked to like give yourself an insane, ridiculous haircut. Uh, but I'm so surprised. Well, the mouse dissection for Donna, that that would never I that would not happen on British TV. I don't know what you think about US TV. Like even though they on British TV they do reality shows where they have to eat
Hmm.
horrible, gross food and stuff. They would never get someone to like dissect a mouse and like take bits out. Like, there's just something like really gross and beyond about that. So, um, I guess just different countries and different cultures have different things that
You
are
can
acceptable. But I'm telling you that that would never happen on British TV, not just Traitors, but
you can ask
um,
your New Zealand coworkers if they really exist. Um, um, maybe they're just made of sturdier stuff than us.
yeah, I'll mention it to them.
Um, so then afterwards, Bailey and Donna talk, with Donna telling us she believes Bailey is faithful. Bailey says she wants to go to the end with Donna, so they have a plan, but we don't get to hear what that plan is. Donna says if Bailey is a traitor, she applauds her, and there's no one else she'd rather go to final two with. Get ready to applaud one way or
Yeah,
another, Donna.
famous last
Um,
words.
yeah. Joe tells Ciale that Jason and Bailey are the traitors and goes over his trap. Ciale tells us you want to take someone who trusts you completely to the end, therefore, Joe. And Joe says that they in Utah made a pact on God, on family. And he knows Ciale is innocent because you would never make a pact on God and on family in a reality show and not mean it. No one would ever, ever, ever do that. Never.
No, or swear on their children's lives.
Yes, exactly. So the plan is to banish Bailey, then Donna, then Jason, and give some money to Utah, which I was like, really? You're saying that on the show? Okay.
Yeah, it's a great plan.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Uh, Jason questions Bailey and thinks she's lying. So I believe at this point that I can see how this is going to go. Joe tells Donna he's certain it's Bailey. He does correctly note that Bailey wants to use Donna to get to final two. What Joe doesn't see is that Ciale is doing the exact same thing with him.
Hmm.
And then we go to the final table. Sorry, final round table.
Yes.
Final table is a poker tournament. Um, Joe starts off and talks about his Jason and Bailey thoughts. He says Donna and Ciale didn't ask him to trust them, but Jason did. So we're in upside down world again. If you ask someone to trust you, you must be a traitor. But of course, at other times, if you don't ask someone to trust you, then you must be a traitor. Uh, Jason says it's because faithfuls have to trust other faithfuls. And he only asked two people to trust him, Joe and Donna, because he believes they're the faithfuls. He hasn't tried to swing votes. He has just shared information. And he thinks Ciale and Bailey are the traitors. He's right. But I just don't think people are going to believe him.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just one of those arguments. It's not really an argument. Like I only asked you this because I'm a faithful, and me saying it proves it. It's like the thing that we keep saying on the show. You said you were faithful. Why do you keep saying you're faithful? If you're faithful, you don't need to say you're faithful. And then at other times, people get accused of the opposite.
Right. Right.
You didn't ever say you were a faithful. That means you're not one. So it's just all meaningless words.
Yes. Bailey takes the opportunity to brings up his behavior after the Knoll banishment. Ciale defends himself and turns Bailey, and then Jason and Joe. Even Donna starts asking questions, and Bailey thoughts previous day. Joe is being all kinds of sarcastic to her, so she turns on him and asks if he's shown honor and integrity every time he sat at the table and pointed at people with very little evidence, and then 5 minutes later been like, "Oh yeah, sorry." Which, by the way, you go, Bailey. I love it. Um, Joe does not love it. He gets all huffy and says, "Who is she that she thinks he has to prove anything to her?" Who is she? She's a fellow game. That's who she is. But he's so high on himself at this point that, as usual, he is convinced he's right and he is not listening. Now, it turns out he is right
Yeah,
about
he's
her.
accidentally right. Yeah.
Yeah. And at this moment, I am feeling like she's a goner. But I also feel like he's going to have the rug pulled out from him at the end. And so I'm kind of looking forward to that part. But, you know, um, Paul ends the discussion and it's time to vote. Bailey votes Cialy. Cialy votes Bailey. Joe votes Bailey. Donna votes Cialy. Jason votes makes the deciding vote, and casts it for Cialy. And I am shocked. I was sure he was going to vote Bailey, and then, like I said, Joe would lose at the end. But no, he votes out Cialy, and he was convinced by Kat, who pretty much hallucinated the conversation. So once again, we have someone who was right for the wrong reason.
Yeah. I was also very surprised at his vote. And at this point, when I realized Cialy was going, I, I mean, right, I was gonna claim that I knew Bailey was gonna win at this point. I didn't, but I thought she could really get away with it at this point. I thought she's
Mm-hmm.
really got an opportunity here
Yeah.
to take the win.
Yeah. And Ciale has to leave in silence, which annoys me because I wanted to see Joe's face when he found out Ciale was indeed a traitor. But nothing we
Yeah,
can
we're
do about
kind
that.
of. I've got thoughts on this. Yeah, we're robbed of that reveal. We've seen this before in Canada, Traitors Canada. This sort of last minute, you're banished, but don't tell anyone what you
Mm-hmm.
are. Goodbye. And I maintain what I thought before that I feel like this is a very last minute decision on the part of the producers. I don't think this was written in all along.
I think
Um,
it was for this because they had the opportunity to see it in Traders Canada. So I saw that and went, "Ooh, I like that game mechanic."
I don't know why. I think it annoys me that. I mean, I suppose it kind of happened around the same time in Traitors Canada, so maybe it is
Mm-hmm.
written in advance. I don't know. Maybe I'm too skeptical that I think it feels contrived. I think it's because they don't tell us beforehand. They don't tell us, by the way, at this banishment, like Paul doesn't say to them, at this banishment, you will not find out the status of the person you
Mm-hmm.
met. It just sort of happens, which it just makes me think, oh, it feels like a sudden rule change or decision to suit the producer. And I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong, but my impression is I I don't like it. I feel like it just is kind of made up. But then they
I
continue doing it for the rest of the game from
Yeah.
here on in, so maybe.
I feel like they probably did notify all the players ahead of time and we just didn't see it because
Hmm.
otherwise you risk someone blurting it out.
I guess, yeah.
Like if they waited until when Paul actually said it, Ciale could have said something or made an indication before then.
Hmm.
And so I think they probably did tell the players ahead of time. Um, and what it accomplishes, I think, is it allows a situation uh, similar to what happened in US season two, where even when you're done with all the traders, you could still have faithful going against each other because
Mhm.
they just don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
And so it keeps some of that bloodthirstiness in the game, which I think they like.
yeah.
Jason knows Bailey is a traitor. Bailey needs Donna to side with her. Joe knows he's easily misled, which is true, but funny based on the way he was just acting moments ago at the round table. Um, Donna wants to trust Bailey, but is unsure. At this moment, I believe Donna will stand with Bailey, but I can't be sure if I would have felt the same way if I hadn't been somewhat spoiled in the way that I most dislike. Someone made a comment on an older TikTok video I had posted about Donna being clueless to the end. The person commented this. I don't know why you would post a spoiler on a video about something that happened previously. So people think, come on, don't do that. But it leads me to believe at this moment she will stick with Bailey and Bailey will win.
Yeah.
When I saw the spoiler comment itself, I didn't know what it pertained to at that moment. But then once we got to this situation, I was like, oh, now I know.
Yeah. Luckily, I didn't have the ending spoiled for me this season. I have had before from
Yeah.
people on social media. I have had something else spoiled for me earlier this season. I think just little note to the listeners. Even though we podcast about the show, we have not necessarily watched it within an hour of it broadcasting. So
Yes.
sometimes people do send me messages on Instagram or leave comments, assuming
Hmm.
I have seen it. I don't always see the episodes immediately. So please don't
Yes.
assume that we've
Right.
watched it.
Right.
Don't spoil anything for us.
Yeah. So anyway, the final four have to decide whether to end the game or banish again. And indeed, they do. Jason votes Bailey. Bailey votes Joe. Donna votes Joe. Joe votes Jason. The funny thing is that Joe asked where the logic was in voting for him when everyone knows he's faithful. But then he voted Jason, even though he should have known Jason would vote Bailey based on the previous discussions. So he could have at least tied it, but instead he left his vote just hanging there. Even Bailey was surprised. But that also makes me question why she and Donna voted for him. Because if she believed Joe would vote for her, he had to think Jason would vote for her too. So that would have tied it up. And in a tie situation, I think Donna was the most likely person to crack. I think Donna should have voted for Jason, who was more likely to be a traitor than Joe was, unless there was something I'm missing.
Yeah, maybe I don't know if it's just the sort of chaos of Joe that just threw them, or he just was
Mm-hmm.
so unpredictable. Maybe at least Jason was always quite consistent. I'm not sure.
I don't either, but it's interesting that I feel like Bailey made a mistake in her plan, but Joe made an even bigger mistake in his vote. Anyway, Jason, when you start playing emotionally, you get taken advantage of. And, you know, that's what Joe did right there. Joe says all he ever had was his intuition, and that was what he felt. Yep, Joe. And how good was that intuition? Exactly. I think we saw that throughout the season. So they have to decide again and all vote to banish again. Joe votes Bailey. Bailey votes Jason. Donna votes Jason, as I knew she would, thanks to that spoiler comment.
Yeah.
Grumble, grumble, grumble. And so, you know, you can insert tense music and lots of cutaway shots of it. Donna reveals she's a faithful. When it comes to Bailey, she whispers that it's her worst nightmare. And my first thought was, because they have a number of little shots cut in there, and I'm thinking, oh, Donna must not have heard that or chose to ignore it in that moment. But then she follows it by saying she's a traitor, and Donna breaks down crying. And it wasn't until I was editing together my TikTok video congratulating Bailey that when I cut out all that other stuff, I realized when that video plays, it's perfect. So I think they spliced it out, and then I made my video and spliced it back together. So I think it happened like, it's my worst nightmare. I'm a traitor. Like,
Yeah.
Donna didn't have time to react, I think is what happened.
Okay.
So anyway, as Donna is understanding, Bailey repeats this was her worst case scenario because she wanted to win at the end with Donna as a faithful. Donna says she didn't want to come off as a fool, but Paul assures her that hasn't happened and she played spectacularly. It's very nice of Paul. I think saying she played spectacularly might be a bit of an exaggeration. No offense to Donna. I like Donna. She has commented on a couple of my videos. But yes, you did fine, Donna. And she tells us that she should have seen it and listened to those around her and trusted Jason. In Donna's defense, it's easy to say that with hindsight. But you do have to trust someone in the game, and it makes more sense to go with the person or people you've been with the whole time as opposed to those who have been working as a group against you. So,
Yeah.
yes, it's easy for her to say, and I understand her saying, I should have listened, but that's because she knows now. So she was in a difficult situation, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
In any case, she said she was authentically herself and had her integrity and didn't have to lie, which, of course, we know how I feel about that.
uh,
Uh,
what about, I mean, well, you're probably just about to get there, but what are your thoughts on Bailey as a winner and how she played towards the end?
well, first, I do want to say, I thought it was funny that Paul kind of chided Bailey for not looking very excited, and Bailey says she came for an adventure and to see how she would do, and Paul just kept pumping her up as the ultimate traitor. And he adds at the very end, she worked really hard to win that money, just like everyone else worked really hard to lose it, which
Yeah,
I thought was a very funny closing comment.
it made me laugh.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yes, congratulations to Bailey. Um, I am very happy with the winner. I will say I would have been very happy if Ciale had won. I would have been very happy if Jason had won after he figured everything out.
Hmm.
No offense to Joe, but if he would have won, I think it would have sucked for a great overall season. It would not be a fun ending for me personally. Um, both Bailey and Ciale had their one ally who would never turn on them. And then Jason just flipped against Ciale in large part thanks to Kat's phantom conversation. So it truly could have gone either way. And props to Jason for figuring it all out, even though those props aren't worth actual money. Um, and so I think we're seeing again, this is the strategy. Get someone who trusts you completely. And if you are a faithful, get people who trust you completely because you could be recruited.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
What did you think?
I well, I feel very smug. Uh,
Yeah.
I feel very smug and vindicated because way back at the beginning of the season, when asked Matthew, with absolutely no knowledge of what is about to happen in this season, what do you think will happen? I said, I think a traitor will win and it will be a recruit traitor this season. And then when Bailey was recruited, I said, I think she's going to win now. And
Mm-hmm.
she did. I
She
think
did.
just because I think she sort of had the right she reminded, right, okay, spoiler here, let's skip ahead if you don't want to know anything about Australia season one. She kind of reminded me of the winner of season one of Australia, who I think won in a fair kind of similar way, like a female player who is recruited more than halfway through the game,
Mm-hmm.
who had been pretty sort of inconsequential until then, like really quiet, got on with people, very amiable and liked by the other players. And so I think Bailey just had a personality that lended itself to getting away with things and not coming under
Yes.
suspicion. Quite quiet, clever, sort of very friendly, sweet. And that just sort of, in terms of human nature, I think people probably just don't go. They just don't suspect someone of her disposition could be the
Mm-hmm.
traitor in this game. So she just kind of was the perfect person to play that role. Uh,
Yeah.
I towards the last, I don't know, the last first 15 minutes of the final episode, yeah, I did start to think, oh, wait a minute. Maybe we are going to end up with another faithful win like season one. Maybe I've been wrong this whole time. So, but that's what makes it exciting to watch. That I
Right.
didn't know for sure until the very end what the hell
Hmm.
was going to happen, and that's why it's so exciting. Um, I I mean, I have another couple of thoughts on this season overall. I'm guessing you have some overall thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I do want to mention is it does blow my mind that Bailey Wood Ark had not made the terrible decision to quit.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
I mean, Jane gone. She didn't want her, I mean, of the two. Um, so I just thought that was, but Bailey took great advantage of her opportunity. So, good for her for doing that. Um, and I just want to reiterate, I'm so annoyed that we did not get a reveal of Joe finding out he was wrong about Ciale. Then again, he'd probably just ignore it and compliment himself for being right about Bailey. But I, they could do with was it US or UK or both that had the post. Oh, UK had that little show afterwards where they showed the reveal, and
Yeah.
then US just had clips, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, for season
Uh,
two.
yeah, UK had Traitors Uncloaked, this sort of
Right.
spin-off visual podcast, as they called it. Yeah, and you got to see the reveals of them finding out. And Traitors, Canada, I think maybe did like online. You could go on their the Instagram page,
Hmm.
and that's where you could see them be revealed. So, and I really enjoyed those. So yeah, it's a shame we don't get that for New Zealand.
Yeah. So I that's all I have right now.
Yeah, my overall thoughts on the season, as you can
Hmm.
probably tell, is I really enjoyed it. Loved the season. Had
Yes.
lots of again people leaving comments on YouTube and sending emails and commenting on the Instagram posts. All really positive. People seem to have really enjoyed this season. It's funny. I and I know some of the players listen to the podcast. This is no shade. Season one of Traitors New Zealand wasn't one of my favorites. Like I didn't. It was fine for me. It's not up there with my top seasons. So I wasn't wildly anticipating this season, but it really exceeded my expectations. I enjoyed it a lot more than season one. I found it a lot more entertaining. Partly because, like I've mentioned before, I think you can tell there's been a bit more money spent on it, and I
Hmm.
like that isn't this half celebrity casting.
Yeah,
Um,
and that was it for me. I always found it hard to rank Traders New Zealand season one because I felt like it was kind of a different game. It was like
mm,
if a bunch of friends got together, like a couple of different friend groups got together and played a game where I know three or four people and that person knows three or four people and that person, and oh, here's a straggler, and so it was kind of a different game. And, at the end, you even had the really rich guy who's like, I don't even need the money. I'm just going to donate it. Um, and I suspect they paid some of those people appearance fees, which they
mm.
didn't necessarily have to do. I don't know. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they were not enough on the list of celebrities that they did. But um, so I definitely liked this. I mean, this season is, I would say, among the top. You know, I I'm not good at ranking, uh, um, but I think it's one of the top international English speaking seasons. I would say.
Yeah, yeah. So well done to everyone involved. And South Pacific Pictures is, I think, the name of the production company. Great job. My other final thought is something that we've mentioned throughout the podcast season. Is I think this season of Traitors New Zealand is a great example now of. I'm going to borrow a phrase that you used, David, at one point. I think we're seeing the rise of the meta game, and that
Yes.
we've reached the point where people on the show know what the show is. They have seen other
Yes.
versions of it. They've watched season one. They understand the rules and they understand tactics and they understand different ways to play it. And they can think of examples of things that other players have, not that they ever reference it on the show, but
Hmm.
clearly they know, not all of them, but clearly a lot of the players
Yeah.
know what they're doing. They understand the ins and outs of the game and they have a better understanding of the consequences of certain actions. So it does change it. It changes the way that they play, not in a bad way, in a really interesting way. So
Right.
I think that will just sort of continue to evolve now. And like, the next season three of US and season three of UK, we're going to start seeing players, maybe not US if the
Yeah,
celebrities
I
have
was
no
gonna say
idea.
not. Yeah, you saw me shaking my head right away. We'll be lucky if they, read the rule book and watch one.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's one reason that I rate this season so highly is because most of them did their homework and were playing it smart.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, we're sort of reaching the end of the podcast. We do have to finish our game. I'm going to sort of
Hmm.
hold off on our big dramatic reveal and jump in with a few things I want to mention. Firstly, big news that I've sort of teased a few times. There will be some interviews with the first couple of New Zealand contestants. I've got that all lined up. So the podcast season is not done. So if you've enjoyed watching Traitors New Zealand, you will be able to hear me talking to some of the contestants from it. Uh, you will find out very soon who they will be. I'm very excited to talk to them, and hopefully after the this first couple, there'll be even more contestants I'll have on the podcast. So I'm really looking forward to that. I have three recommendations I am going to give to listeners. I think Traitors fans will particularly enjoy a couple of them I have mentioned already on the podcast. The first is a short film on YouTube that I was involved in the making of. It's called The Dead Don't Care. It's a short film for Channel 4 Comedy here in the UK. It's a very short 6 minutes, all about a medium with genuine clairvoyant powers who gets asked the most unusual questions you could think of. It's written by and starring Stephen Buchanan, a great Scottish stand-up and comedy writer. Good fun, mad, wacky, not for children, and
Ah,
filled with props from my home. And I'll put the link in the description. But if you just go on YouTube and look for it, The Dead Don't Care, it will be the first result I'm sure that appears. And some people watched it after my recommendation last time and sent messages, nice messages saying they enjoyed it. Please leave a comment on the YouTube page. That would be good for us. My second recommendation is the
if it's a nice
play.
comment. If it's a
Yes,
nice comment.
a nice comment. Yeah, yeah. Uh, there's a play on in London. I think it's the first show was tonight. Well, when I'm recording this, depending on when you're listening, this may mean absolutely nothing. The Strange Affair of Paul is part of the Camden Fringe in London, and it is a comedy play all about a washed up detective who becomes obsessed with why Paul from the Traitors Australia season one is almost completely edited out of the show. I will be attending on Wednesday, the 7th of August. It's at the Hen and Chickens Theatre in Islington. And I think there is another show beyond that on Thursday, 8th of August. There are 3 nights the play is on. So if you're in London, it would be great to go along and support Callum Jones, who has written the show and is performing it, and is obviously a fan of the Traitors. My third recommendation is something that I've mentioned a long time ago on the podcast, but not in this season. I always start off by saying, I'm Matthew, I'm a writer working in TV development. So one of the things that I have written is a novel. I've written a couple of novels, but I'm going to recommend my most recent novel. It's called The Stone in My Pocket. It is about a 17-year-old called Nathan who feels he can't speak to anyone around him, but believes he can speak to ghosts. It's set in a Scottish village in 1999 and opens with Nathan lying awake at midnight listening to a strange voice floating through his open bedroom window. If you like 90s nostalgia, pop culture references, a touch of the supernatural, and if you like the Traitor's secrecy, misdirects, I think you will enjoy The Stone in My Pocket. It's available most places online where you'd normally buy books. And I have copies of it too. So if you're having difficulty getting them online, you could get in touch with me directly, and we could figure something out. Now, we have a couple of final things. We've been playing the Trade Our Traitor. We have been, I think, lying to one another. Um, David, I assume you lied to me at some point in the podcast.
I did. I did.
Okay, I I lied to you too. I'm very honest. I actually lied more than once because I was worried that one of my lies might not count. So
Ah,
I I gave you a couple of things to pick from. I made it easier for you. Uh,
okay.
so I'll start with you. I'm going to guess what your
Okay.
lie might have been. Now, again, I've got my list. I've always got my list of options. You
Hmm.
talked a couple of times about Big Brother US, and I don't watch Big Brother US, so you could have been lying about anything, and I wouldn't know. You talked about you talked about this place in New Zealand, that Noel uh was lived or had shot something in. You looked up his IMDb page. I thought that could be a lie. Um, you talked about the smiling assassin of New Zealand Survivor, and I thought maybe that there's a sneaky lie in there that it wasn't New Zealand, maybe it was another season altogether. You talked about Ben commenting on one of your TikTok videos, I think. I am going to go for the smiling assassin and say there's something not right there. That was from a different season of Survivor or something like that.
Well, just to be clear, I said Australian Survivor. I did
Oh,
not say New
Australian,
Zealand
Australian. I'm sorry.
because New Zealand Survivor only had two
Oh, that's right.
seasons, and that was a while ago.
Okay.
But uh, that was true.
Okay. Great. Well done. You you got me.
I buried it again. I buried it in that whole story about the spin-off article
uh
because everything I said there was true, except they had him listed as a writer in the preview article. Not an actor. They didn't mention actor at all in the preview article. And which added to the confusion about him saying he was an actor when he was banished because they were like, but he said he was a writer coming in. Um, so I did repeat that like two or three times because it kind of got mixed in to the first time just to make sure you heard that. And I could not be accused of burying it too much.
um utterly passed me by. No idea. Didn't question any of it at all. It's so wrong. So wrong.
All right, so I went with your thing and actually made a list. And the first thing I wrote down, well, I have not planned to lie this time. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny if his lie was to say he hadn't planned to lie, and that was his lie, and it's this whole circular thing.
Is that just one of your options? Do you have
That's
more?
just one of the
All right, okay,
options.
okay.
The other was when you were talking about rewinding multiple times. The other one, as I kind of hinted at, was your New Zealand coworkers who didn't know anything about the show, if they even exist. And then I still wasn't sure because although you may have edited it out, said, "Oh, you cut off." And I was like, "Really? Are you going to use the same thing twice? Would you do that to me?" I have
So
decided not do that. Maybe you were. Wait, what were you going to say?
I was just going to ask, which one are you going to go for?
Oh, okay. I think that one would be that you said you have not planned to lie, and that was the lie. So I'm going with that.
Okay. That that was my lie.
Yes!
That was my original lie.
Redemption at the very
Yeah,
end of the season.
I thought I was really clever and sneaky that I'll say that I haven't planned a lie, but that's the lie that I planned. But then I was worried and I thought, That's too sneaky. You can't lie about that's not real. So as we went on, I thought I should really make up something else as well in case he thinks that's not fair. It would have been really funny if I had just kept telling you that you were cutting out again and you weren't really, and I really considered it, but I decided not to. My other lie, you kind of caught me. I do work with one person from New Zealand, not a couple
Mm,
of people. So that was a very small lie. So you kind of caught me out there as well.
yeah.
So as it turns out, I am the rubbish bad liar, and you are the traitor hunter. You put everything you've learned from the season to good use. Well done.
Yay, Jamie.
So, as always, you can leave reviews of the podcast. You can follow and subscribe on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere else that you would normally get podcasts. I listen to an app called Castbox, I think is what it's called. Yes, Castbox. Um, where lots of people already subscribe, which is great. You can send well, I was going to say you could send questions, but we don't really have another podcast episode lined up.
Yeah.
But hey, send questions anyway. Why not? We've done a Q&A episode before that went really well, so maybe we'll do that again. If you want to send any questions, thoughts on the episodes, thoughts on the whole season, now that we've seen all of it, you could send that to me on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube at the Trader Podcast. You can get in touch on X at the Trader Pod, or you could email me at the Trader Podcast at gmail.com. And for the last time this season, well, for now, until we do some interviews with the contestants, yeah, I forgot that. If you feel like you wanted to put in a little donation to help me run the podcasts, because I have to pay for things like the Zoom Pro subscription that David and I are using right now, and the sort of editing software to cut out all of the real mistakes, not the fake mistakes that I pretend David made. Um, and yes, all those sorts of things, all the different editing things that I use, and the use a site called Podcastle to host all of the data and all that stuff. You could do that on coffee.com/Matthew Keeley. That's ko-fi.com/Matthew Keeley. The link is in the episode description. David, where can we find you and all of the wonderful things you're doing online?
All over the place. The easiest way to find everything in one spot is Linktree/David Bloomberg with a dot before the EE and the URL there. Or if you want more direct ways, you can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky as at David Bloom. And on the video platforms that I've talked about, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram is at David Bloomberg TV. And because Threads is connected to Instagram, I'm at David Bloomberg TV there as well. Speaking of the video platforms, I've been posting at least 3 the past couple days, 4 reality TV short videos every day since US Big Brother began. And of course, a lot of those are US Big Brother. But besides that, there's, of course, been a number of Traitors New Zealand, which have mostly done surprisingly well, considering that they're kind of buried in there.
Hmm.
Occasional Amazing Race Canada, which those videos are usually about the former Traitors Canada people, Kevin and Gurleen. I tend to focus on them. And Claim to Fame, which is a U.S. show here. Also, due to US Big Brother being on, I am on the Rob Has a Podcast Network weekly with my Why Blank Lost podcast, where I talk about why each player lost. And so you can find me there as well.
I actually saw one of your clips about Claim to Fame today, and it was a
Mm,
clip of, I assume, a member of the Jackson family accidentally
yes.
revealing that his surname was Jackson.
Yes, yes. He was
So,
telling a story. He was telling a story about his kids, and he said something like, "Well, I can't teach my kids to do that because I'd have to take them to the ER." And they'd say, "Mr. Jackson, what are you doing back here?" And
yes.
then one of the players was like, "Mr. Jackson, really?"
And are they right?
Yes.
Is he like a Jackson of the Jacksons?
He must be. I mean, we
Like a
don't know for
cousin or
sure.
something?
Well,
Okay.
we think he's like a nephew of Michael Jackson.
Oh, so the viewers don't even know who they are.
Not always. It seems to be that he's a nephew of Michael Jackson,
Okay.
Michael
Uh,
Jackson's brothers, but I think he would be too old for that or
yeah.
too young for that.
Um, we don't get the show here in the UK, but I know what it is, and I've seen little clips of it. So it's
Hmm.
I think I would enjoy it. I would like to see it.
It is a fun show. This season, I'm a little annoyed because some of the most fun players have gotten knocked out early.
Uh,
But it is, you think, oh, it's just this fun show about pop culture and stuff like that. But it really is a strategic show.
yeah,
And you have to determine, oh, who do you share your information with and stuff like that. So, but it's definitely a fun show.
yeah, and yeah. You mentioned The Amazing Race, which is another show we don't have The Amazing Race in the UK, but we have Race Across the World, which is very similar.
Hmm.
And they just announced that Celebrity Race Across the World, which is the second season of that, starts really soon here in the UK. So I am a recent convert to Race Across the World, and
Ah,
I really, really enjoyed the last season. So I'm going to watch that. Starts very soon on BBC. Um, David's link tree is always in the episode description as well, folks. So you can really easily find all of his social media platforms on there. All that's left, David, is to say thank you. Thank you so much for joining me this season. You've been so helpful, going through all of the episodes with me. So I really appreciate all the time it's taken you. I hope you've had a good time covering Traitors New Zealand.
definitely, definitely. I wouldn't do it if I didn't have a good time.
Yeah,
So thank you. It gives me the outlet to talk about it and, people on social media also. And so, yeah, it's lots of fun.
brilliant. And hopefully you will be back with me soon for something sometime Traitors related.
Yes, if we ever get that announcement from whatever British channel that other show is supposed to be on that we might
Oh yes,
cover,
yeah.
we'll just keep people hanging. That other show somewhere that we might cover. Yes.
Yeah. Until that mysterious time comes, listeners, thank you for joining us this season. Keep us on your radar.
See ya.